Hey guys, welcome back to more Entitled People stories. In this video, a ridiculously racist police officer punched a black woman, not thinking that there would be severe consequences because of who her husband was. Let's dive right into the video to find out what happened. And the title story starts like this. So I have a story to share and it feels like it is time for me to share it with the world. I wish I didn't have to, and that stories like mine were not so common. I'm black and my husband is white. The neighborhood we live in is mostly white, and when we first moved in, there were more than a few comments made at my expense when we were getting friendly with the neighbors. I get it, this kind of thing is everywhere, but I didn't want to excuse it or make my neighbors think that I condone it. I called them out on it and there were a lot of people that were uncomfortable, but some of those people came back and apologized for their behavior. The minority, well, you can lead a horse to water, right? But really, it is 2024, why the heck are people still thinking like they are in the 1960s? Anyway, that was a point of contention when we moved, but my husband assured me that the city was an accepting one. We had chosen the place we wanted to move together after a month of debating and deliberation, so I did not want to write it off just because some people were not willing to have open minds. My husband is the chief of police in our city, taking up the mantle less than a year after we moved into the neighborhood, and I am a surgeon at the local hospital. While he works more regular hours, my schedule is all over the place, pulling me out of bed at 1 in the morning or having me make a U-turn back to the hospital if there is an emergency. It usually ends up with me on the road at odd times during the night or early morning, so I always make sure that I'm alert enough to drive before I head out to the hospital to head home. 2 years ago, I was heading home around 11 at night. The surgery I'd been a part of took longer than expected, but the patient was doing well, so that was all that mattered to me. I was tired, but not enough to fall asleep at the wheel, so I decided to head back home and spend the rest of the night curled up next to my husband. I had just entered the neighborhood I lived in when I saw police lights behind me. I stopped the car and pulled over, and I could already see a few house lights go on around me, but I kept my composure. I did not know why someone would pull me over, but if they were under my husband's jurisdiction, it was for a good reason. The cop that walked up to my driver's side window was not one I recognized from my husband's roster, but that did not mean that he and my husband did not work together. The cop did not even ask for my license or registration, he just stated that my headlight was out and that I was driving recklessly. Even though I had turned the car off, my keys were still in the ignition. I could see that both of my headlights were functional, which had me concerned as to what the cop was pulling me over for. Still, I kept my composure and explained that I was coming home from work and if I could have the real reason why he pulled me over. The cop gave me a look of pure disgust and told me that he never saw my kind driving out here. That got me feeling angry. I asked for his badge number and said that unless he had a reason to pull me over, I would be driving away in a few seconds. At this point there were a few people out on their lawns, and since the cop didn't bother to turn off his lights, the cop told me to get out of the car, and I told him that I had a right to know what it was that he was looking for or why I had been stopped. I admit I don't really remember what happened next. I had to rely on videos on the internet to show me what happened because when I came back to myself, I was sitting in a holding cell with the left side of my face swollen and bruised. The cop had punched me while I was in my car, opened the door himself, handcuffed me, and took me to the station. There were about a dozen people outside that watched what happened, and a few of them took videos of it and uploaded them to the internet. That night into the next morning, I became a viral sensation. Before that, I had a chance to call my husband to let him know where I was, and he immediately came to the station to bring me home, and he was appalled that something had happened to me under his watch. I took off from the hospital for a few days to get myself back to feeling normal. The encounter shook me up even though I could not remember most of it. I think that made it even scarier. Just waking up in an unfamiliar place and being told that I had done things was off-putting. My husband was furious that I was being charged with battery and resisting arrest since I told him I couldn't remember what happened to me before I woke up in holding. The videos of me went viral, and the next day had me looking through the comments of people that I knew and strangers from other parts of the country. People were appalled at my treatment and demanded that the cop be brought to justice. I called my husband and told him about the videos and described the cop that had assaulted me. He seemed to know who it was, but he was at a loss as to why that cop would attack me. I found out later that my husband went to the commissioner about my case, letting him know that there were videos of my arrest online that were garnering attention. The commissioner told him not to worry about the case since it was being handled internally. My husband asked what that meant since my case had not even passed his desk, and the commissioner assured him that everything would be fine and that the videos would be debunked. The commissioner, the cop that arrested me, and a lot of the other members of the police force that my husband oversaw hadn't met me when he got the job. My husband had hosted a few get-togethers with the members of the precinct, but only a few people came. I knew a lot of the members of his staff and a lot of the cops that he worked with. I did not know the cop that pulled me over that night though. The cop that arrested me had seen my license but did not put two and two together. To him I was just a black woman that he could abuse. I wanted to show him that I would not take his abuse and would fight for my rights. I told my husband that I wanted to build a case against his office, and he agreed to help me using what reach he had in his precinct. While he was at his office, I went door to door to neighbors trying to find the people that had taken the videos of me. A few people refused to open their doors to me, but the ones that did were more than happy to share what they knew about the cop that arrested me. Apparently the cop, who I'll call Officer D, was notorious around the neighborhood for targeting people he thought did not fit in to the neighborhood. It was racial profiling at its most dangerous, and I made sure to get whatever evidence I could to combat it. It was emotionally exhausting, I won't sugarcoat that. The fact that there was such racial prejudice in my neighborhood and the city I lived in made me wanna just pack up everything and leave. Taking my husband and coming up with some excuse that maybe this was not the best place for us. However, I loved my job at the hospital, and I know my husband had worked so hard to become chief of police. I didn't want to take us away from everything that we had worked for, so I took time in my private moments to let myself fall apart. My husband came to me a few days later and on his knees apologized for what had happened to me. A very long and racist story short, before we had moved in and he became the chief of police, the department was very stringent about crimes against people of color. The current commissioner had focused on those crimes, almost demonizing the minorities that were actually the victims. With what I gathered and his evidence, my husband went to the superintendent officer of the county in order to let them know what was going on. The officer could only advise that my husband had enough for a court case, as the word would dissuade the department but would not end the racism. So then we went to court. My husband and I sued the entire department, and the whole case was a spectacle. The news outlets were shocked that a police chief would turn on his fellow officers, while other stations focused on the videos of me being arrested and how Officer D had no clue who I was. The court case revealed my identity as the chief of police's wife, which surprised and appalled Officer D when he was brought to the stand. He claimed that I'd been speeding, but from the report he filed and the video evidence, that claim did not match what he told me when I was in my car. When the commissioner of the police came onto the stand, he spun a tale about how this entire situation was all a misunderstanding and that me and my husband were looking too deep into the issues that had already been handled. My husband had collected cases that the commissioner had thrown out, leaving no less than 10 people of color to sit and wait in jail for trials that were never gonna happen. He denied it, of course, but the evidence was overwhelming. It was no surprise that we won the case. The commissioner, Officer D, and several other officers were taken into custody to serve out sentences based on racial crimes, disposing of evidence, and aggravated assault. That day we won not just for me and the people that the department had wronged, but for the city itself. We were able to show that there were good people in the world that wanted to make it a better place. I'm just glad that I got to be a part of it. And here, Ripe Stars, if you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much, and the next one is a malicious compliance story that starts like this. So this was last year. In hindsight, I feel a little bad for the professor. He was not the worst I'd ever had, and he was up against a university which was in turmoil behind the scenes and spearheading an untested new course. That being said, I'm paying quite exorbitantly for this education, and he was a right snot about this, so It was a history course, and one of the assignments was a group project wherein we presented in front of the class. There was a 3-hour seminar taking place in a lecture hall, the last hour of which was reserved for 2 groups to go up and present at a half-hour apiece. This would involve a Q&A session afterwards, just to keep us on our toes, I suppose. The professor really emphasized that we pick the week and topic we are gonna present in, and that's that. It's first come first serve, and if you miss your spot you get a 0. Thought nothing of it at the time, it seemed fair. Didn't like his attitude, but whatever, right? Well, I won the lottery with the group I was assigned to. They were grand lads and a dream to work with. We decided on an advantageous week to present given our schedules, and we spent the run-up fine-tuning this presentation and really getting it to work. We used a stopwatch and everything. We even brought in outsiders to ask questions we might not predict. All was well. Except that we were presenting in week 5 and a disturbing pattern had emerged during the seminars in week 2, 3 and 4. For all his talk about keeping things constrained and everyone working within a schedule, whoever went second was screwed. The first group always ran long and the second group had to make do with at most 20 minutes. You could see the stress on their faces. So come week 5, the rest of my group, a little bit more nervous than I am, worries aloud about whether all of our careful planning will be for pot. I decide to throw a Hail Mary thinking that the worst I could guess is a no, right? So I go up right before the class starts and ask the professor, what are the odds that we might go on first out of the 2 after all? We are sure we have this down to 30 minutes. Well, the dude proceeds to rake me across the coals in front of everyone. It was a normal speaking voice, but the podium was right by the door and people were filing in. Tells me not to ask such a stupid question and to go back to my seat. I go back, tail between my legs, pissed off, and sit with steam shooting out of my ears for the next 2 hours. Sure enough, the other group goes first, and sure enough, they run long. We shoot concerned looks to the professor, who is too busy watching the other group to notice. Come 50 minutes in, and the first group is just about wrapping up. The guys in my group are silently freaking out about this. Nightmare, right? That's when the professor stands up, polite applause all around, and then says, well, I guess we are finishing early today, huh? Like a scene out of a courtroom drama, the 4 of us stand up like a shot and ask what the hell is going on here. He cannot quite hear us from the back and we are all talking at once, so he asks, what's going on? I charge down those steps like King Kong in the same tone of voice in front of the same door that people were now filing out of. I tell this guy that we are booked for the assignment today and we have something prepared. What? Turns out he totally forgot that we were presenting today, and that's why he was so mad at my suggestion earlier. So I tell him that we are presenting now to an empty room or he's giving us $100. The poor guy sure did try, insisted that we had not signed up this week, we had though, and insisted that he could schedule us in next week, even assuming 2 or 4 of our group were not away on placement for their teaching degree. We booked for this week as ordered. Insisting that he had somewhere to be, not my problem, dude, the guy just had to wear it. After making a phone call to presumably his next appointment, he had to stand there white as a sheet and wear it. I'll never forget the look on his face, so we presented to a lecture hall empty of all but the professor and 2 students who I guess wanted to see more of the show. We got a great grade to boot. Anyway, the next one is titled, I Never Worked Here. At the time I was working grave and swing as a casino player's host in Renault NV. For those who don't know what this job is, we take care of the high rollers, make sure they get comps, dining and hotel reservations, get invites to tournaments, limo rides, you name it. And well, I wore a nice black blazer with a name tag, slacks, comfortable but professional shoes, hair and makeup done. The days I worked swing I was off at 3 AM, but after waiting for the bus and the ride home, I would make it to my place at about 5 AM. Directly across the street from my home was a Walgreens. I stopped in a lot of mornings to grab a protein shake, pick up prescriptions, etc. But on Wednesday mornings they put out a lot of clearance items. You could snag small appliances dirt cheap. So I was always there on Wednesdays stocking up on Christmas and birthday presents, etc. The employees and manager knew me by sight and some by name. I was usually a zombie after work, I think like most people. And this Wednesday was no different. I was looking over the latest selection, trying to decide if I needed a new coffee maker or just wanted one because it was clearanced for like $5. A woman was next to me speaking Tagalog into her phone. I don't speak it, but Renault has a pretty large Filipino community, so I could at least recognize it. Her language is not important to the story though, it just struck me how odd the little things we remember are. She finished her conversation and looked at me. Can I get a discount on this? I don't remember what this was, some small appliance. The box is smashed up. No idea, I told her, but I would ask to plug it in to test it before I bought it if the box is damaged. I have no idea if anyone can actually do that, but it seemed reasonable to me. Why would you sell something that doesn't work? She demanded. I had no idea at this point that she thought I worked there. I thought she was making conversation. In my defense, I was half asleep and just wanted a good deal on a damn stick blender. Oh, I told her, I absolutely wouldn't sell it, but I'm not in the business of selling things anyway. "Oh, so you're too good and important to sell things. That's just for the low employees, huh?" I finally looked at her. Until then, I was pretty focused on staying away. I could see she was getting angry. It dawned on me that I still had my name tag on. I slipped it off. They are the kinds with magnets, not pins, and stuck it in my pocket. "Oh, sorry, I forgot to take this off. I started to say I don't work here, but she was having none of that. "Oh, you think you're too good to help me? Just because I'm a Filipina?" She may have said Filipino. I confess I don't know which is correct and only going off memory. "My money is good, you." She said something in Tagalog that didn't sound flattering. "You think you can trick me taking off your name tag?" I just sighed. "I don't want your money. I don't work here. I'm shopping. Please leave me alone." She ignored everything I just said except for, "Oh, you won't be getting my money because you need to give me this free for not helping me." "Ma'am," I tried to reason with her, "I cannot give you that. I really don't work here. If you take it without paying, that is stealing." "Oh, now you think I'm poor and a thief? What the hell? Where did poor come from?" "I want to talk to the manager of the whole store." "Lady," I turned back to the shelf, "I wish you would effing talk to anyone but me." I did not swear because I was angry, I just have a potty mouth. She stomped off her heels, making little tick 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 sounds on the linoleum. I decided I did need another coffee maker and that stick blender. As I was putting both in my cart, I hear tick tick tick. Great, she's back, but she's not alone. Tom, the store manager, was with her. There she is! The woman shrieked. "She called me a poor thief and she swore at me. I want you to fire her and make her poor." Weird obsession with poverty. Tom looked at me confused. What is happening? I grinned and held up my coffee maker. Shopping! Tom was even more confused. "But why are you insulting her and swearing? She thinks I work here and wanted me to let her steal an appliance." Okay, I know, a bit of an exaggeration, but she started it. This was the moment that her medication stopped working. In a very loud mix of English and Tagalog, she shrieked out our entire interaction. Surprisingly, she told it correctly too, except that I didn't put my name tag away to trick her. Tom was done at this point. He just looked at me and said, "You're fired." The woman grinned maliciously at me, grabbed her smashed up box and stormed off with Tom as I shrugged and made my way over to the allergy medication. Or some other area of the store. I don't 100% remember, but I have terrible allergies, so that seems likely. At the register, Tom asked me what really happened. I told him everything, including how I told her that I wished she would effing talk to anyone but me. Tom laughed and told me I was still fired. Yay! I grinned. Do I get a severance package? Tom laughed even harder. To be fair, you did swear at her, plus you don't actually work here, so no severance package. That's it. I shopped there for many years before I moved. I never saw her again, so I'm sure she went on content with me getting fired and making me poor. And yeah, ripe stars, that is honestly such a good way to solve the situation. Everyone is happy. Karen with the lies she had been told. And OP that he finally got rid of Karen. Anyway, the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. My older brother was married briefly and it didn't work out. He recently remarried. She is 22, he is 33. She is very pretty, but very young, and she comes off as younger than she is in her attitude. She also doesn't seem unintelligent per se, but she has a high school education and has never worked a day in her life and doesn't seem that interested in personal growth and education. She and my brother's explicit plan is to start having kids as soon as possible, ideally 3 to 4. She is right now a stay-at-home wife and will be a stay-at-home mom. They are already trying to get pregnant. My brother and I both inherited a nest egg when our dad passed away a decade ago, and our mom is well off too, and he makes large salary personally. He has several properties and a full-time housekeeper. I don't have a problem with her or with him, though I do think the maturity levels seem like it would be an issue. I am only 26 and due to this age difference have always had trouble relating to my brother as an equal. He can be patronizing, etc. At best, 22 years old is equally mature to me, but realistically a bit less mature since she is 4 years younger. So if my brother and I cannot always relate as equals, it's hard to imagine her and him relating as equals. But like I said, she's not far from my age, so to me, she is more of a peer and I don't dislike her, she is fun. And I'm not working right now either because, like I said, I have money from my parents and a small business on the side. I do recognize it's a privilege to not have to work right now, so we've been hanging out sometimes during the weekdays, like grabbing coffee or going to the gym. I was at their house after going to the gym with her and my brother was there. While she was grabbing something from another room, my brother took a shot at me for being unemployed and being able to just go to the gym for hours in the middle of the workday. I said we are both going to the gym in the middle of a weekday, your wife is unemployed too. He said that's different, and I said don't take shots at me for not working if you have a trophy wife doing the same. He got really offended and yelled at me, but in the process of him being offended, his wife heard what I said, or maybe she overheard my comment, I'm not sure. She was upset too, but am I wrong for calling a spade a spade? And here, Ripe Stars, let me know what you think about this one in the comments. I'm very curious about what you have to say. Comment number 1 said, everyone sucks here except maybe her. It sounds like you're trying to be friendly with her and then just insulting her. You like her enough to hang out with her, so don't be crummy to her. Your brother deserved a clapback, but not one at her expense. Comment number 2, everyone sucks here. Your brother was wrong to say what he did, but you were also out of line when you lashed out at his wife in the same manner that he lashed out at you. A stay-at-home wife is not necessarily the same as a trophy wife. If you had simply left it at unemployed, I would not be so critical of you, and I would agree that you were calling a spade a spade. You escalated up to insults by calling her a trophy wife though. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads, and also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow.